If we really want to get out of this mess, we're gonna have to keep focusing on the solution, the ultimate solution. There will be intermediate steps. It's impossible to just make that huge big leap. But unless we keep in mind where we really want to go, we're not going to go there. We're just going to stop somewhere halfway in the middle. And we're not going to get to the final point where we really want to end up. So the point is that what we really want is a completely different society, where people all work together in harmony for the happiness of everybody. Everybody's happiness is important, and we need to just make sure that we create as much happiness as possible. And the only way to do that is by just being who we are, empathic people, and working together. Now, such a society has, well, if it has existed ever anywhere, we don't know what, when and where, because we're not told this. Because our psychopathic society wants to continue making people believe that there is nothing else, there's no other solution than living in a psychopathic society, which is of course absurd. So, what we have seen so far, and the only things we are being told, in the kind of history we're being told, whether it's true or not true, doesn't matter. The known history, as it is as it is taught to us today, gives only examples of societies where a little elite lives it up and has a mass of slaves to do all of the dirty work and makes their lifestyle sustainable. So the only thing we see is a little group of rich people and a vast majority of poor people who have to labor and slave to make the little group of rich people, which proclaim to be the rulers and have crowned themselves as rulers, to make their lifestyle their easy way of living, their living in luxury and in enjoyment, to make that possible. So, we know in all of the ancient societies we learn about had slaves. They all used slave labor, which made it a bit, well, very simple, of course, for the non-slaves to have an easy life. Ancient Greece, which is considered the cradle of European society, and was the first place where democracy was invented, so to speak. They at least coined the term democracy, demokratin, so the people rule. But that was not democracy as we would conceive it today, because it had nothing to do with what we think of as democracy, because the people, the demos, were not the slaves, while we would nowadays equate the slaves as being the people. But that was absolutely not the case. The exact same happened so many centuries later in the US. So in Greece, you had a small elite that had democracy amongst themselves, but they didn't have to work. They had an army of slaves to do all of that work for them, who were not considered to be part of any democracy. They didn't decide anything, not at all. They were just lesser beings, slaves. So after, Rome was of course exactly the same thing. So after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Europe developed the feudal model, so which is the exact same thing. You have an aristocracy and you have serfs, and the serfs make sure that the aristocracy can live in luxury and richness, and has all of the benefits of benefits of everything the abused army of serfs produce and create. So they always, everything goes back on, reverts to where the energy comes from, of what happens. And so the only society we get in front of us is a society that abuses the physical power of a mass of people for the benefit of a happy few. After feudalism, which officially breaks down with the French Revolution. The French Revolution was the exact same thing. We are taught or told that the French Revolution was the uprising of the people against the aristocracy, which is not the reality. That was not at all what was happening. The French Revolution, once again, was not the people going after the aristocracy. No, there had been created over time a middle class, the bourgeoisie. These were the peoples who lived within the walls of the cities, the burgs. They were the burghers. And the French Revolution was a revolution of the burghers against the aristocracy. But the peasants, the farmers, the laborers, all of that, they were just left out. They had nothing to do with that whole revolution. They were not part of the equation. So it was the bourgeoisie who won from the aristocracy only to just replace. It's just a replacement of who the elite is. So over all known history or taught history, only what we get is elites infighting and interchanging, but the mass of slaves remain the same. The US Revolution and the creation of the US is exactly the same. We, the people, were not at all what is now thought of like everybody, the people. No, we, the people at that time, were white male landowners. Everybody else was not people. They were just extra stupid things that didn't count really. So you had a mass of slaves. It's exactly the same. You had disgruntled people from Europe who knew they could not become aristocracy because they were not born in the aristocratic families. And so they were just so disgruntled that they said, okay, if we cannot get into the castle and become the kings and queens, then we're going to just move somewhere else, start again, and we'll be the kings and queens and we'll be in the castle because there's nobody to tell us we're not. And everybody that is there will just slaughter them and make sure they leave. Make sure that either they accept that we are now the kings and queens, or everybody else can just move out and go away. So, and then afterwards you have the same thing with the Industrial Revolution. You just change names. So instead of serfs, we are now called the proletariat. We become the laborers, also abused, extorted. I mean, it's just the exact same thing. You have a small elite of factory owners who abuse the people, the masses, for their benefit. And then you have the Russian Revolution, which is absolutely the very last thing it was Russian. There was nothing Russian about the Bolshevik Revolution. These people were not even Russian, and it was the destruction of the Russian Empire which was envisaged and which succeeded. And again, there's just the Russian aristocracy is replaced by a Jewish foreign new leadership elite that just benefits of the mass of the people again. And that collapsed eventually, but still today we have the exact same thing. Everybody's in the rat race and everybody's slaving to make the billionaires richer. So, in order to get out of this stupidity, of this setup of psychopathic values at the basis of society, we need to just be able to imagine a society that doesn't have this. The whole point is that most people cannot imagine a society where there is not one or other form of a castle with a king and serfs around it. And you can see in all kinds of Disney portrayals of stuff that that image of the benevolent king and the happy masses is always there, and it's just to keep the image of the psychopathic society in which an elite needs to rule over the masses. Now, obviously, we don't want to go there. We want to go to a society where people are all equal and working all together for the benefit of all, and nobody needs to be better than anybody else, and nobody needs to have more than anybody else. That whole idea that we need to have stuff, physical things, is already psychopathic. because the only thing of value in this world is love and being loved, and that you can never buy. We all know you can't buy love. So we need to just completely reimagine what kind of society we want. The whole idea of that indoctrination is so strong that we probably will not be able, we will have to probably go through some kind of period of benevolent leaders, but we cannot for 1 second lose track of the end goal, because once we forget that where we need to go is to a society where everybody is equal and we all work together, then once we forget that that is the aim, we will no longer do whatsoever to get there, because we don't know anymore that we want to go there. And once we have benevolent leaders and stuff like that, it may help for a while, but the only thing they should be focused on is empowerment of every single person, so that we can get to a society without leaders and without an elite that rules. Because that's really where we want to end up. So we really need to imagine, we need to stop thinking that, well, so many people are stuck in a very, very psychopathic indoctrination, where they just think, well, I just now want to be in the castle. I want to be in the castle and you are going to be my serfs. And that's the promise of the American dream was exactly that. Now we are the rich people, but you have the possibility to also be the rich person with serfs at one point, which is of course absurd, because you cannot, an elite and masses, you cannot invert that. You cannot say, okay, everybody gets to be the elite and then everybody moves around in the masses. It's insane. It will never happen. Nobody, you cannot organize that so that everybody has in their lifetime a passage through the castle, unless you make it a day or something, like everybody is king for a day or so, and then you turn around and you keep playing slaves and serfs. But it's idiotic. You don't want to have that. I mean, it's a meaningless kind of society. So we really need to keep in mind and try to understand that we don't want a castle and serfs. We want something completely different. That needs to go. This can never be our aim, to have a benevolent king and a happy mass. No, that's it, even if it is an intermediate step that we cannot skip. We really need to go beyond that and need to keep thinking. We need something that nobody has told us ever existed. There may have been smaller societies that functioned in that way, like probably some of the Native American tribes were functioning in that kind of way, where it was the benefit of all that was the aim, and even though you had it's more, it gets more into benevolent leaders again, because it's very hard for us to imagine a society in which there are no leaders. So this is the big issue. We need to be able to imagine the unimaginable, so to speak, and really go beyond what we know so far. We need to do away with the psychopathic society and imagine the empathic society, which is something so brand new, most people have no clue what it might ever look like. And that is the problem, because people need to, if we cannot imagine it, we cannot create it. So we all need to understand that our highest dreams are the only things worth going after. A completely different society where everybody is just happy and everybody works for the happiness of all. And because that's where we derive our happiness from, is from making other people happy. That's the highest happiness we know. So that needs to be the aim. A society where we all are allowed to follow our deepest yearning, which is to make other people happy.